You rise up in the morning beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Friday. It is actually Friday as I'm recording this, so live streaming for anybody on? Probably not. It's late. I'm just gonna say nobody's on because it makes me look better because it's late. Not that nobody's listening. Anyhow, man, what a I know I've said this so many freaking times. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing of it, but like what a just a weird but also just fucking fantastic time to be alive, to just be witnessing shit happen as it happens. It's I mean, man, I can imagine it was kind of like the people in World War II when you could get the news back and forth within hours, possibly possibly minutes, depending on where you were. But also it would take sometimes it would take months to get the news out to you. Where now just like you can find out what the fuck's going on instantaneously. Just no matter where you're at. And like, man, it is wild like how different we are from 1922, but how fucking similar we are to 1922. It is it's really really funny how shit has happened. You know, growing up where I grew up in the very southeast corner of Colorado. I went to elementary school in Campo, Colorado. I went to I spent not quite a year in Springfield, Colorado, and then I finished out my public's, well, I guess my elementary and junior and senior high school at Walsh, Colorado, all within Baca County, Colorado, the most southeast county in the state of Colorado. And depending on where I was living at the time, I grew up anywhere from 8 miles to now about 40 miles north of the Oklahoma border, and anywhere from about 15 to 40 miles west of the Kansas line. And basically what was described as the center of the Dust Bowl. It was either Back County, Colorado, or Cimarron County, Oklahoma, or Dallam County, Texas. Just so Dalhart, Texas, Boise City, Oklahoma, or either Springfield or Walsh or Campo, Colorado. And like my grandparents lived through it. My my folks were born right as they were coming out of the Dust Bowl, and like it just made a huge impression on several generations of people that lived in that area. And um it's kind of funny how it's played out. I've talked about it many times, how like the rural flight deal, where like I'm a perfect example, where I'm several generations tied to Back County, Colorado, but I don't see myself moving back there. There's not much for me. And it's kind of a depressing story when you find out how everybody got there in the first place, and then just watching it ebb and flow. And yeah, I don't know how many times history has to repeat itself before we ever learn anything. I don't know if we ever actually do learn anything, but um anyhow, I the Great Depression was we're coming up on the 100-year anniversary of I think it was a Black Tuesday. It was October 29th, I think, or maybe it was October something, 1929. Anyway, whenever the stock market crashed, put an end to the Roaring Twenties. Um, I'm waiting for the Roaring Twenties. I'm thinking it might have been the Roaring Teens. I don't know. Like I said, and I named this and I think it's kind of a good fitting title for a series, but History Rhymes. And taken from the Mark Twain quote, where history doesn't repeat itself, but it surely rhymes. Uh, there's so many similarities between now and the 1920s, but also the 1930s, but also like the 1900s and 1910s. There's a lot of things at play that remind me of each one of those different decades. Um, so yeah, while it's not exactly like the 1920s, but we are still clinging on to the pandemic. I mean, I think we hit the million people died mark, is what we commemorated or something. And seems like every now and then, even though the whole COVID thing is just, everybody's completely over it for the most part, they'll still throw one out every now and then just to like test the waters and be like, "Hey, million people died," and see if a bunch of people get upset about it, and then be like, "All right, we can put the mask back on." But nobody really seems to give a shit, so they're just like, "Hey, yeah, remember, never forget solidarity." And but anyway, we haven't ever really come out of that pandemic deal yet, which, the Spanish flu started in 1918, and right at the tail end of World War One, which was devastating enough, and then you get a pandemic, and also you had income tax and central banks, and well, by central banks I mean the Federal Reserve, which people give Ron Paul a hard time about harping on the Federal Reserve, but it's so tied into how everything has taken place within the last century or so. Since it came to pass in 1917, and I should really do an episode trying in my best way to explain it, because it's complicated, but it's complicated because it's supposed to be complicated. And when you break down actually what it doesn't make that much sense. So they make it more complicated. So complicated means it's you know I mean, it must work. If it took people that long to formulate all this shit to make it work, it must work, right? But it actually doesn't. But anyhow, we'll that'll be a topic for another day. Um, but anyway, like going into the 1920s, like they hit a pretty big depression. So a recession is 1/4 of downward GDP growth. Uh, and a depression is 3 consecutive quarters of downward economic growth. So how they didn't really call the pandemic a depression, because we were locked down for basically 3/4 before they finally kind of, like, there was a handful of states here and there, but like nationwide really, um lockdowns ended about 3 months after they shut down. I mean about 3/4, so 9 months, maybe 10 months. I think it, like, January shit kind of started opening nationwide, but somehow that didn't get described as a depression. Like, how they ran the numbers and said, like, the economy did not um shrink for 3 downward GDP growth. If let me well, let's look it up. Let's look it up. I've been saying for a while, like, I think we're in the middle of a depression. We just don't know it yet. um, the Hoovervilles of the 1930s, compared to the tent cities in your big urban areas today. Um, there's quite a little bit of difference, but they're still there, and I don't know. There might be something there. So what was I looking up? Um, oh yeah, the I don't remember. Faced that one. Um, regardless, we oh yeah, the definition of depression. That's what we were looking for. Um, economic depression. Think that's 3 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Financial turmoil. Um, all right, economic depression is an occurrence where an economy is in a state of financial turmoil, often the result of a period of negative activity based on the country's GDP rate. It is a lot worse than a recession, with GDP failing significantly and usually lasts for many years. In the U.S., the Great Depression lasted for a decade. unemployment rate reaching 25% and wages falling by 42%. Okay. So causes of an economic depression, be it stock market crash, decrease in manufacturing orders, control of prices and wages, deflation, oil price hikes, loss of consumer confidence, and signs of an upcoming depression, worsening unemployment rate, rising inflation, declining property sales, increasing credit card debt defaults, and what'd they say? This is from corporate finance.com. They say ways to prevent another economic depression is expansionary monetary policy. Expansionary monetary policy involves cutting interest rates to incur. Oh my word! Yeah, well, we were at zero rates for a long time, so can't really cut much more than that. To encourage investment and borrowing. Expansionary fiscal policy, increasing government spend. This is a left-wing rag. Financial stability involves the government guaranteeing bank deposits, the credibility of the bank. Huh. Okay. Well, I've been listening to The Worst Hard Time. I have it in book form. Show it to you right now. The Worst Hard Time by Timothy Egan, where I've been doing or gleaning a bunch of my research here. And also just like I said, I grew up a generation removed from the Dust Bowl. And like it made such a huge impact on people's lives, the Depression and the Dust Bowl. I mean the Dust Bowl, like compounded the Depression, but also the Depression like compounded the Dust Bowl, and it was just a self-licking ice cream cone of sorts that like how shit happened. I was having a discussion with my new pen writer today, and of how the Dust Bowl is really, from what I can recall, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. This is the only instance in recorded history where mankind has maybe some of the nuclear deals, but this is like the first time like on a widespread scale where mankind has had an impact on the climate. I don't think they changed it. I think they exacerbated it. I honestly don't think mankind is. I hope not. I don't think mankind is capable of changing the climate. But when you take the confluence of events where the government tried to settle the Great Plains, and not only they try to settle the Great Plains, we had World War I happening, and so they tried to like rapidly increase the settling of the Great Plains, and they also wanted all this short grass prairie to be plowed up and planted to wheat because of the World War I in Europe, and once again it was Russia and Ukraine having problems with their wheat supply, which feeds most of Europe. So we spread out. We settled places that were nothing but grasslands before. We plowed them up, and whether it be the government or railroad companies. They promised the rain would follow the plow. And it so happens that it was kind of a good year at that point. There was old timers and cowboys saying like, "Hey, you shouldn't do that. This isn't farm country. Uh, not going to end up good." But they did it anyways, and so much so like people were speculating on land. They would come in for a weekend and plant, couple quarters of dryland wheat, and then they would just head back to Chicago or wherever the fuck they were from. And it was the boom. Just it was a boondoggle. Just um but just like when the cattle market gets high and you get a couple 3 years in a row of good cattle markets, and everybody and their dog wants to be a rancher and a cattle baron at some point, and then as soon as the market squeezes back down, they get out real quick. But it wasn't just that, but it was it was kind of how everything was at the time. Like people speculating on Wall Street. They were in and out, or they were in and then they would lose everything. Like they're still in, but the company, they own plenty of stocks in this company, but it that company no longer exists anymore. Or same thing when they'd go plant 160 acres, and then when this drought hit, and I think they said something like 300 million acres of the Great Plains got plowed under, planted to wheat or whatever crop it was. But natural grasslands, some of the biggest grasslands in the world, all gets plowed under within like a 20-year period. And while the rain falls, it's pretty good farm ground. But if it don't, and it's prone to not to, being the prairie, it's prone to be dry. Just how the whole world works. And also, it's windy all the freaking time, and then it just we weren't ready for for a dry, windy spell on the plains with no cover at all, like with nothing to hold the dirt down, and so the dirt just fucking blew. I was saying, in the worst hard times. I've heard depression story after depression story, but I don't recall hearing anything like this. But people used to just drag a chain behind their vehicle. They'd hook a chain to their rear axle or something, or their bumper, because those dust storms that blew through had so much static electricity that it would just short out the electrical system on a guy's car. So you had to drag a chain to ground your vehicle, in case one of those those dusters blew through. And it's just fucking insane. And to think that humans actually played a pretty significant part of the climate for a decade, before it finally kind of started to rain. But I mean, it was like 8 years in the Dust Bowl part of the world where it just didn't fucking rain. Like 8 years in a row, just no rain, no rain. Or when it did rain, it rained too hard for it to soak in, and all ran off, and there wasn't nothing to catch it anymore because it all been plowed under. And like, was that drought bound to happen? Yeah, anybody who had lived on the plains at that for for more than 10 years at that point would tell you that, like, yeah, it's bound to be dry. And then when it's dry like that, the wind's gonna really blow. But if as long as you have some grass in the ground, like it'll keep the dirt from blowing. It's not gonna grow a crop, but it's the grass will be there because it's got good deep roots. And they plowed that all up. And yeah, so that dry period was bound to come. It always does. But when it did, like yeah, the people weren't ready for it. The people that caused it to happen, just they weren't ready for it. And how could they be? They didn't know it was going to happen. I mean, there were people warning about how the dirt was going to blow, but like nobody had a clue how bad that was going to be. And essentially, it was all like it kind of started before World War One, but it got ramped up to the 10th degree because of food shortages in Europe during World War One, and we uh, we had to get into World War Two to fully pull us out of the economic depression caused from that boom bust deal, and oof, we had a decade worth of government programs trying to restart the economy, which was done with good intentions, but all it did was prolong uh, the depression, and it took World War II before we fully pulled on out of it. And man, after 2020, like I don't know how you don't call 2020 like the beginning of like the new Great Depression. I don't know how they're figuring their numbers. Uh and unless they're just really like flirting around the edges, or I just don't understand like the true definition of a depression. But if I remember right, it was 3 quarters in a row, and we went March to the end of 2020 without. Maybe we gained a little bit back in the fall months, but I don't know. I feel like we're right on the edge of that. If we're not already in it, looking at some of these homeless camps where they have a shocking kind of similarity to the Hoovervilles of the 30s. And I don't know. And now like we're ramping up this deal with Ukraine, and it just feels so fucking similar. But like I was talking with Jen the other day, if we do get into war in Ukraine, that will almost certainly have to bring back the draft, to just have the sheer amount of troops that it would take to fight a land war in Europe. Um, but before that, even like the funny part is like I was talking with Casey Howell, who the guy just he's still recovering from a bad horse wreck, but he's been on the show before, a buddy of mine, and I was talking about how we were just talking about cowboying and whatnot, and how if I didn't have wife and kids, I would probably be out on a wagon or doing a camp job somewhere. I wouldn't be working at a feedlot. But now, like looking at the economic stuff, I'm in about as good of a spot as I can be should everything just hit the fan, because at some point uh the demand for beef will be there. Pretty much always. It might drop considerably depending on how poor people get and how fast they get poor. Um, but that's when it comes to industries that are kind of recession proof. The growing of food is one of those, and then my wife is in education, which is also uh pretty recession proof. And then I, with this podcast, the entertainment industry, for whatever reason, is pretty recession proof. So, like, of the three things that we got going on, like, I think we'll be okay. Like, does that mean we're gonna be rich? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But I think we'll be able to get by. Uh, but this depression coming up is gonna be the most bougie depression of all time. Like, every freaking hobo that's on the train looking for jobs is gonna have his parents paying for his cell phone bill, and he's gonna be able to live tweet it as he's fucking riding on the top of a tanker, tanker car or something like that. It's like, I think we're gonna see a whole lot of like nomadic behavior. And I was talking with Casey. I said, like, till I can make enough money from the podcast where I don't have to worry about uh my income from my job, then it's a living quarters trailer, and we're just gonna go full on gypsy lifestyle. And I think there's gonna be a ton of people like that around the U.S. But I also wonder, like, are we gonna have the big dust storms? Like, we've had wind like you wouldn't believe unless you lived through the Dust Bowl. Uh, but it's been, seems like it's been a lot more widespread than it was back in those days. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not reading the right accounts of it just blowing like a son of a bitch out here, in the western United States. But um, it's pretty damn dry everywhere, and it's shaping up to be something something pretty serious. You've got this huge fight with the Packers, between the Packers and the Ranchers, brewing. Uh, you've got war in Russia, and like, we're just escalating that up. But at the same time, we're worried about nonsense. Like, we're glued to either the television screen or your phone screen with Will Smith getting, slapping the shit out of Chris Rock. We've got Johnny Depp and his crazy ex-wife telling their entire life under oath on camera. And we've got just a flood of migrants coming across the southern border, which, nothing against them. Most of them, vast majority of them, just looking for work. And yeah, so now, like, our modern day white hobos have got some serious, like, stiff competition. And even the black folks have got some serious competition with all these migrants coming up from Mexico and Central America. And like, how's that going to play out when the economy just takes a shit for good, like, goes full depression mode? Like, how, because if once it happens in the US, that's going to trigger it or worldwide. And so, like, how's that going to work when we have the just millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of incredibly poor people? It was 25% unemployment rate during the 30s, during the Great Depression. 25%. So they estimate 50 million, about say half of that is like your working population or like your voting population. So, say 175 million people, and then a quarter of those are out of work. Like that's your working population, and a quarter of that. So would that be roughly 75 divided by 4? Would that 15, 2.5? It'd be like just roughly 20%, or it'd be 175. So it'd be 25 million. Um, then like another 20 on top of that. So 45 million people just unemployed, and no hope of a job. That was another thing. Is not only were they unemployed, but just like no hope of anything going on. And so back then they had some like tangible skills that they could use to make a living. Most people could harvest a crop. They could do something. They could run a shovel. Now, like, shit. The trans generation, you can't ask them to do anything without risking a lawsuit or protest on your front lawn. And my God, like, can you imagine the meltdown? When there's just no cushy jobs to be had, or like the Soros Foundation just stops paying people to protest. My word. That I think that might be when we reach peak outrage. I've been wondering, I've been talking about it for a while, like how are they at peak outrage all the time? I think I think when all the shit dries up and you've got purple hair, you're a disgusting human being with radical worldviews that virtually nobody agrees with. Um, but all of a sudden, like, you're not in the news anymore and nobody sympathizes with you and nobody pays you to be a fucking freak anymore because they're tightening the belt because the economy's in the shitter, and even George Soros is like, nah, we'll have to wait till this passes over and regroup. But for now, sorry, tranny, like we can't do it anymore. Like we're gonna let you go. Like, I think that's when we hit peak outrage. And I just wonder, like, do we have a reverse Okie migration? During the 30s, we had a bunch of, like, particularly like sharecropper types from eastern Oklahoma that moved to California, and some of them got turned back. But it led to these migrant camps, these Hoovervilles. Now, are we going to see like a huge migration from California back to like Oklahoma and Texas and Arkansas? I mean, it's possible. We kind of saw that already, but it wasn't people really looking for work. They were looking to get out of California. Um, It'll be really interesting to see where people go to work. Are they going to go back to California to work in tech? I honestly, I don't know. And like, how's the new Okie migration going to go? Is it going to be a reverse Okie migration, um, or like even more people going to move to California? Where are the people coming up from Mexico and Central America and South America, like where are they gonna go? Where are they gonna get like shipped off to? Because that's they're just doing that nowadays, just like taking people from the border and giving them a notice to appear and then just like shipping them off somewhere. Somewhere. Uncle Joe knows, but I'm not privy to that information. But they go somewhere, and like, are we gonna just see an ever increasing stream of that coming up? Um, I don't know. Like it's all shaping up to be another Grapes of Wrath type situation, but it's gonna be bougie as fuck. Like there's gonna be hobos with like espresso kits, and like and like really high dollar coffee, um, making their way around to maybe they're going to the oasis in the Midwest for abortions. They're just like the lovely place where you don't have to worry about having to keep your own baby. You can just end it in style. Oasis of baby killing. Um, like do we have just a stream of people heading into Chicago? Um, you had we've had this throughout the years. You had the jalopy in the 30s with like the Grapes of Wrath style. You had the VW van in the 60s with the hippies, and now like uh are they gonna have like one of maybe Elon's like Tesla truck? What was it called? The Cybertruck? Maybe the Cybertruck will be like the new like vehicle of choice for vagrants. I don't know. But I'm kind of, like I said, I think I'm set up well enough, or about as well as you can be without being a billionaire. I'm set up well enough to be okay should shit hit the fan and just kind of be able to ride it out and and make do. But if you're not one of those people, like is the Cybertruck gonna be the jalopy of the 2020s? I don't know. And where are they gonna go? But what are they gonna do? Are we gonna get some good music out of this? We definitely gonna get some good content. But one of the things that's really been lacking out of the struggle and strife and turmoil over the past 10 years or so has been like protest music. The 60s and 70s, epic, epic for music. And yeah, we're kind of lacking there. The meme game has been out of control, but like we could use some good music that's fitting for the times. And I think I might play. No, I will, because I will be in Denver at Red Rocks. I guess Morrison, Colorado. Red Rocks on Sunday, and I will be watching the Turnpike fucking Troubadours play their little hearts out. And it's one of the bands that me and my wife have loved ever since we got together. And even though I'm a Colorado native, I've never been to Red Rocks, and couldn't think of a better time to go see a show than one of Turnpike's first shows back together. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna end this show with their song 1968, even though it's not a real like depression, uh, Great Depression era song, but it just describes a ton of the turmoil and shit going on. And I don't know. I'm really kind of nervous about where shit goes from here. Um, like I'm not real nervous about surviving. Like I said, I think we'll survive. But what we got coming after this is what's really got me worried. Do we bring it back towards like the country was founded, and have a more hands-off approach from the federal government, or we just go even further into authoritarianism. And I'm really afraid it's going to be the latter. And I just it's an interesting time. I've watched a ton of events throughout history and how they played out, and hey, this one's kind of going right along. It's a different tune, but same type of shit. Just economic unrest. You got wars somewhere else, and you're about to have a bunch of really pissed off people on your hands. So you throw them a bone, or you throw them a distraction. And when you throw them a bone, you throw them a bone until it doesn't work, and then that's when you got to distract them with something big. And usually that's a war, and we're shaping up to be heading into war, and that's just not a good thing for anybody. But uh, there's also the what did stock market ended up down again today. Um, I don't know what the overall the market was, but no, I guess it was kind of steady today, but yeah. We're gonna have a crash at some point, and I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's just boy, if you can't look back and see just a ton of parallels, like you're not looking very hard at all. Uh, there's just so much shit that parallels, and I'm just here to see how people react. And now, I mean, just think if people had a GoPro camera back in the 30s, how much epic content you would have got a hold of. Like if they would have had Snapchat back in the 30s, and Instagram and Twitter, man, that would have been incredible. But I think we're headed that way. So I can't wait. Can't fucking wait for that. I mean, it's gonna suck probably gonna suck really hard. But there's a chance where like you get some really, really epic shit. You can experience some really epic shit too. And there also might be a chance to make some money on it, to show people just how dumb we were during the great bougie recession of the 2020s. That's what I'm predicting. It's gonna be a Great Depression. It's gonna be bougie as fuck. And if we do go to war, I do look forward to seeing a whole bunch of non-binary people with purple hair or blue hair or green hair, just crying, sobbing uncontrollably as they get their heads shaved and they're handed a rifle. Because I think that's probably what's going to happen if we end up with a ground war in Europe. And the content will be